Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to a new video as well as a new format on this channel, which is going to be me yapping about all of my different chess books which I own. Since in the last video I was already talking about different training methods and I was speaking about many books as well, and many of you were saying that I could maybe cover a few of my favorite books and what I think about them. Since training with books still, I believe, is a very effective training method. Of course, everyone can decide that for themselves, but in this new format, if it is going well, I'm just gonna review a couple of books which I think can be very useful for you guys to study as well. And for the first edition, I thought there could be nothing better than reviewing this book, which, if you guys are watching many of my videos on this channel, you've probably seen me talking about it as well. It is Lessons on Uncompromising Play by the Czech Grandmaster David Navara, which was actually one of my ways to prepare against my match against him, which has now already concluded some 3 weeks ago. I went through the whole book and, well, you never know if it had to do with the success of the match. Obviously, there were other factors as well, but I do have the feeling that going through this book and actually working on it seriously did help me quite a lot to get into the good shape which I was in during the match. Now, in this video, I would like to show you a couple of examples which are in the book, and also talk about generally how the book is structured. So to begin with, he gives a lot of different chapters, and I think they're very well chosen. Obviously, the whole topic of the book should be lessons on uncompromising play, but he also gives a lot of different chapters, for example, on defense, which is not that often covered, but which also at the same time does have a lot to do with uncompromising play as well. So I'm just going to tell you which are the chapters which he's discussing in this video, in this book. The first one is Fight for the Initiative. The second one is Tenacious Defense, which is also, by the way, this position which we have in front of us. There is the example is from that chapter. Then the next one is Superior Strategy, then Dynamics, Attacking the King. Also, what I would like to mention, because I think it's the first time that I see this in a chess book, is that David actually included a full chapter on Chess 960. So if you want to prepare, I've often got this question already on this channel as well. How do I actually prepare for Chess 960 events? I think that would be a pretty good way to start, because David is annotating some of his own games and some other games as well from Chess 960. So I mean, this is probably the only training resource which I've seen so far which actually covers Chess 960. So that left me impressed, even though I have to be honest, I did not work this chapter through seriously myself. I was focusing on the other chapters more, obviously, because, well, we were playing a classical match and not a Chess 960 match. The next one is Winning on Demand, which is also a nice psychological topic as well, which we see often in matches, specifically, especially in the World Cup, where if you lose the first game, you have to come back in the next one. So David delivers his thoughts there nicely and also shows a couple of examples of his own. Generally, all of the games which are featured, at least like 99% of them, are from his own games. Which is fantastic, because I think this is the way how you improve as well. That you want to read and go through what the player himself was thinking. Obviously, annotations of Kasparov's games, Fischer's games from some other strong players are nice as well, but it's often a huge bonus if you are actually going through the thoughts of the player who played the game themselves. I hope that makes sense. Then next we have the chapter of traps, winning drawish positions, also nice, endgame technique, test and review, where there are many different examples just mixed through. And yeah, then there is complex cases, which are very, very complex games, which he goes through in the very end. Yes, what I also generally very much liked about the book is that the variations which he's covering, obviously they have been checked with the strong engines, but he also gives the logical continuations often. Like what is often bothering me when I'm going through a book, sometimes the logical continuation is missing and only the first computer line is given, which is not the case in this book, which gives you a very nice feeling of going through the book actually and not needing to check every single line with the engine, because David almost always gives the logical and critical variations. All right, so the first example which I want to show you is a game between Timur Radjabov and David Navara from the year 2008. Radjabov had the white pieces. And this is under the chapter of Tenacious Defense. It is a great exercise for calculation, so if you want to solve it by yourself or show it to some of your students, you can make a picture now. So it is white to move here, and Radjabov played a move which looks winning at first, but he missed what David had planned in reply. And Radjabov played the very flashy and nice move Queen g5, which sets up a checkmate threat on g7. And the nice point is that black cannot take because of rook h3, which is checkmate. But what Radjabov probably missed is this nice move, queen takes g2, and David played it in the game. Now, if we go back to this moment, Navara gives a lot of different variations, but the strongest move in the position is the move queen e5. And it's not such an easy move because queen g5, you want to play it just because it looks so nice. And after queen e5, it turns out that white is winning because of the threat of knight takes e8 mostly. Also, sometimes rook takes g7 is in the air. For example, if knight takes f1, knight takes e8 is winning. And if queen takes d3, then rook takes e3. If the queen goes back to g6, now rook g3 is winning. Because if black takes here, rook takes f6, and then some rook discovery is going to come. For example, after queen b1, there is a counter check, and white should be winning. Yeah, David also gives, obviously, queen e5 once you spot it, it does make some sense, but he also gives a nice line after queen c5, which in general is not the strongest move, because after bishop c6, white again should go back with queen e5 and only then is winning. So queen e5 is just the way to win here. But here after bishop b5, he gave a very nice line. A takes b5, knight takes f1, and now white's only winning move is the move knight e8. And he often throws in those questions, which I also really like. He gives some diagram and then always asks a question. For example, here, after rook f takes e8, queen f5, g6, queen f6 check, king g8, he asks a question, how should white continue here? And the obvious continuation, bishop takes g6. By the way, this is another exercise. If you want to make a picture, you can do that now. Bishop takes g6, the logical continuation, is not so strong because black again has this nice defensive move, queen d4 check. And giving the whole queen, but it turns out after knight takes g3, now there's no checkmate. And white is still much better, but the game continues. And it's not an easy conversion for white. So the winning move here is the move bishop c4. And after that, it actually doesn't really continue. Both on f7 and on g6, there are huge threats. But it's, again, kind of resisting the urge to play this move immediately and then double checking, is there any defense? And in this case, there is the nice move queen d4 check. Yeah, so in the game, queen g5 was played and queen takes g2 spotted by Navara. Rook takes g2, a takes g5, and now there's no mate on the h-file. So here the game continued, and actually later on, David was still able to win the game. I will jump just to a later moment after Radjabov made a couple of mistakes, which is here in this endgame where David already had a winning advantage, but only with the way he continued, which is not to take the pawn on a4, which does look kind of logical, but instead to capture the pawn on b2 first, because the a pawn will actually be a much bigger weakness than the b pawn would. And okay, another thing in the book in general, which I enjoyed very much, is simply David's way of putting things. And here, after rook d2 check, I wrote down this small anecdote which he wrote in the book, which is, he wrote, when an old maestro, Bernhard Kagan, was asked whether it is better to give mate or win a queen, he replied, it is naturally better to take the queen, as I can then deliver mate later on. Kind of reflecting the whole situation here, that you shouldn't take this pawn immediately just because it's hanging, but you can actually look for other options. Obviously, the whole quote was kind of ironic as well, but those things make reading a book very enjoyable for me. So this is how the game continued, and then as you can see, the a-pawn is a huge weakness, and now black is winning. If black would take on a4, white actually gets excellent drawing chances with the move g6. And even though black is winning some pawns here, it is actually a draw. Now the f7 pawn is also kind of annoying, and here white has sufficient counterplay. All right, so I want to show you the next example also under tenacious defense, which was the game David Navara against my good friend Radjabov-Navara, German grandmaster. Navara had the white pieces, and here obviously he's worse and has to be quite careful to make a draw. If this pawn on a7 would not be on the board, it would be obviously a draw. But since it is still there, it is not so easy. So white to move and find the best way of defending. Again, you can make a picture now or stop the video if you want to figure it out. It's quite difficult once again. In the game, Navara played the very precise move rook c5, which requires a lot of calculation because entering the pawn, this endgame without rooks on the board could also be just losing on the spot because black has the right bishop. But David calculated all of it, which is after king e6, king b5, bishop e3. He can now go for the move a4. Obviously, if he goes king a6, black can just take, and black would be winning. But after a4, king d7, a5, king c7, c6. Now white has made some sort of fortress, which is actually quite rare. I've never seen that before seeing this game. And the point is that after bishop f2, now white can go king a6, and once black takes on c6, then it is stalemate. So it's actually kind of like a small study. I've known this example before already because I was working together with Radjabov-Navara. He was coaching me for some time, and he did show me this example already a couple of years ago, but it is quite nice. Also, Navara mentioned here after the move king e6, now white can also take here, go king b5, and after king d5, white again has a very important way of continuing. Another small question. Again, that's what I talked about earlier. He doesn't only give one question usually, but goes into some line and then puts a diagram and puts another question. And here, the way for white to draw is the move a4. So it's important to play a4, a5 first, and only then king a6. Because if white starts with king a6, then black has this move bishop b6. And after a5, now king c5, which is easily blunderable, because now after take, white is in Zugzwang, and black is going to win this pawn endgame. But if you start with a4, a5 first, then, okay, let's say black makes a move like this. Now b5, b6 is coming no matter what, and black cannot stop it. Okay, so the next example and the final one, which I would like to show you, was from the chapter Attacking the King, from the game David Navara against Radjabov-Navara 2019. And that game also left a pretty nice impression on me because I was often struggling to understand those positions from the semi-Tarrasch, where white obviously has a big center, but it does feel to me like the center can often get under attack. Black often gets pretty nice counterplay on the c-file, and here Navara showed a very nice way of handling this type of position. Here, this is still sort of a theoretical position right here, and Wesley now made a pretty slow move, which is a6. Navara mentioned in the book that black should play b5 instead and then seek for immediate counterplay with, for example, a5, a4. That would be a better way of continuing for black. After a6, Navara continued with knight e5, knight f6, and now queen f4. Black played queen d6, and now the first question of the book was how should white continue here? I think this is a more simpler question for those of you who are already more advanced players, because it is a typical idea for this type of position, which is the move g4. White's king is not really getting weakened here, just gaining space, and it is more black's king that needs to watch out, because white does have a lot more attacking potential here on the king side. Wesley played rook e7, now g5, take, knight h5, queen e3, g6, and here was the next question, and the position / plan which convinced me to include this in this video. And David asked the question, how should white continue? And again, you can feel free to make a picture or stop the video and try to find the correct path yourself. David played the move rook d3 here, which is a very nice way of regrouping the pieces so that everything is coordinated nicely. The main plan is to play bishop d1 though, and then to challenge this knight on h5, which is actually quite annoying there. And after the knight on h5 disappears, then first of all, the f6 square is going to be weak, as well as the h file is going to open up, which means big trouble for the black king. So rook e7 was played, and now Navara started with king g2 first, which is not the best. Instead, white should just go for the move bishop d1 first, also pointed out by David. And after rook c1, white can take on e1, g takes h5, and now queen e2. You can even step into this pin here just because the knight on e5 is secured nicely, protected by the d4 pawn, and on the next move, queen takes h5 will come, or rook h3, something along those lines, and black should not survive this. David played the move king g2, which in the end also did the job, but here, well, Wesley played the move a5, but instead rook c5 could have been a nice way of asking for some of defending at least. And here it's not so easy for white, but of course the move itself is also quite difficult to stop, to spot. Now rook takes e5 is a threat. If d takes e5, then queen takes e5 actually gives black pretty nice counter chances because knight f4 is coming quickly. So here white would need to find a move rook e1, and here white should still keep a pretty good advantage, but still this position, well, white needs to convert it. I was checking this a bit further myself here. I think David only stopped after that, after here that rook d8 is winning. Still checking this here after king h7, but it turns out white can make this slow move bishop c2, and after knight f4 check there is still king f3, and white is winning. But you know, still this moment with rook d3, I thought this was very nice to point out. It's a really nice way of regrouping the pieces. So I did want to include this in the game later on after Wesley played the move a5. Now bishop d1 was played, and David then also won in style. Exchange down, but there is no defense to all of the threats on the king side. So that was the first book review. I will put a link for the book into the description down below. It was published in the year 2024 by Thinkers Publishing. Just some information on that. I do hope that we are going to see a couple of more books from Navara in the future. I also really enjoyed his first book, which if you want me to make a review on that one, let me know as well. Any other book recommendations slash suggestions, what you would like to see next, let me know in the comment section. Apart from that, if you want to support me, you can check out the video description below for all of my courses, as well as all of my other social media. And apart from that, thank you for watching, guys, and I will see you soon.